It's always a pleasure to partner with you at the event. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see the screen.
Excellent, excellent. As always, it's such a pleasure to be here and be part of this this conference. Almost it has become my ritual. What I wanted to share with you all today is my reflections on the big disruption that's happening in the healthcare industry, led by all the big tech firms. Sometimes we refer to them as an acronym, FAMGA: Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. And this market is so close to my heart. There are two industries that I'm waiting for a major disruption. One is education, the other one is the healthcare, and healthcare more so because that's what represents the universal well-being. And when I look at the healthcare, and if I look at the transformation, I frame it as D to D squared transformation. In other words, today, the healthcare supposedly should be a doctor-centric healthcare, but with the advent of technology like AI and modern technologies, I truly believe that it has to be a D plus D transformation. In other words, doctors need to embrace data, and data and the doctor needs to partner together to drive the transformation in the healthcare industry. So that's kind of the frame of my thinking. And as Murthy and others said, many of you know about my passion for yoga. What yoga literally taught me is how to stay balanced in every challenging situation, stay centered, and always strive for unity and excellence within myself and with the people around. And particularly in the current times of COVID, this way of life of yoga is extremely important for us, and also take this opportunity of the challenge and then use that as a way to seek for excellence and the unity and drive for better excellence. And I truly believe that yoga as a way of life is critical to even transform the healthcare industry. And jumping into the AI, what's interesting to me is about several decades ago, the computing community pondered a very profound question on can machines think, led by Alan Turing. And what we commonly refer to as the Turing test, what it essentially meant was, can machines be indistinguishable to humans while interacting with each other at the cognitive level, emotional level, and also at the intuition level. With the pace of all the advancements that are happening in the technology, I truly believe that we are going to succeed in solving the Turing test with the sensors and the assistants that are pervading our lives across all industries. And this is a tremendous opportunity for all of us to be in the field of software. And if I were to look at the software evolution over the past several decades and then map it to the context of the healthcare, the early software 1.0 was all about the client server revolution, getting from mainframe. Where if you map it to the healthcare data, it's all about the data that's sitting in everybody's computers, in the clinics, and it's all about storing in a server on the desktop. And then the internet revolution happened, and that literally led to this creation of electronic medical records or electronic health records, where you could easily exchange the data and you can communicate with each other to facilitate better outcomes. And then mobile revolution happened, led by Apple. And that unleashed this very targeted apps that allowed people to either both do self-care, but also deliver better care in terms of mobile apps powered by huge cloud backend. Now we are in the fourth or fifth evolution of the software. We are in the AI, augmented reality, and the automation era. And this represents the digital transformation that we commonly refer to, where the focus is now all about achieving targeted outcomes. In the healthcare industry, what that means is how can we deliver better, accessible, affordable, and also more specific outcomes on solving some of the problems that we never were able to solve, such as some of the things like cancer or dealing with pandemics and so on and so forth. This is the opportunity that we all represent. And I think this transformation we all know, like in the transportation industry, digital transformation created an industry of the new transportation, where today with the access of a mobile device, all of us can get a ride from wherever we want, wherever we go, at the best possible marketplace. And this is the opportunity that I believe every industry, whether it's education, healthcare, or retail, transportation, and all of us represent. And if you don't participate in in this transformation yourself, we can all be assured that we will be disrupted and will become irrelevant. Now, if I look at the technology enablers, things like augmented reality, the new devices such as Apple devices and the mobile. And
Srini Garu,
yeah,
are you advancing your slides or you're in the first slide? Want to make sure it's moving.
I'm advancing my slides.
No, I'm not. We are not seeing it.
You're not? I see.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure that I waited for a few minutes to.
I see.
I see the first slide only, which says AI and BigTech Disruption in healthcare.
Okay. I'm glad that you actually.
Yeah. I don't like to interrupt unless it's important.
No, that's it. I'm glad that you interrupted. I'm clicking on the resume share, but for some reason it's not working.
You have to, are you advancing your slides?
Yes, I am.
On your screen. Okay, let's wait and see if Sridhar Garu, Leena, do you know what's maybe happening there?
Okay, just 1 second. Let me do one aspect. Okay.
Unshare and share. That's what the prompt was.
Let me actually do this.
Yeah, we are seeing more skill. Okay. Okay. We are seeing the one which, okay, Alan Turing, and you're moving back and forth.
Yeah.
I know.
Can you see now?
Yeah, we are seeing other ones, the balance in the yoga one picture that we see, etc. Okay.
Okay. So I'm not going to go through my script again. Let me just continue.
Yeah.
Back here, the new devices like the smart watches from the companies like Apple and augmented reality and powered by the mobile and the cloud, what they are allowing us to is to create and conceive better outcomes across all industries. And we can see some of these companies now, like for example, Guardant Health, it's one of the Sequoia companies. Now this is completely an AI-centric company that is pioneering the new cancer detection and the treatment outcomes, and they're also public. And then companies like Verily, which is part of an Alphabet, they're trying to extend their deep mind-based research across different healthcare industries, from delivering value-based care to solving cardiology or the cancer and diabetic neuropathy and very specific very outcomes. And then what it's also creating is new types of well-being startups. A company called Wellness that I unofficially advise, they created this Yogify, which is a smart AI and virtual reality-based yoga mat that is actually allowing people to make yoga as part of a way of life to deliver better health outcomes. And then, of course, the big tech, Google, Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft. And one thing that I want to explicitly mention here is whatever I'm sharing today does not reflect any of the views of either Apple or the Claris, but these are some of my passionate and some of the work that I do in the healthcare industry. And why disruption in healthcare? We looked at the need for digital transformation and why the healthcare industry. Number one is if you look at the amount of spend that is that the healthcare is causing on our overall economy, it's in the trillions of dollars. And at the very same time, the number of people that are going through this lifestyle diseases like the diabetes and particularly in the aging population, that number is dramatically increasing. And what we now believe is that to address this challenge of the economic burden and the aging population, and the growing explosion of either the pandemics or the lifestyle diseases, the only opportunity that we have right now is the technology to come together with our existing processes to create the disruption in the healthcare. And when I went around and did some primary research of the four primary constituents, number one, when I started talking to doctors as part of my research, even the primary care providers, the doctors, are feeling that the current system is not working for them. And in fact, many of the doctors that I talked to, they basically said the healthcare insurance need to be treated like an auto insurance. The current insurance mechanism is completely disintermediating the patient's, the citizen's responsibility in driving towards a meaningful outcome. So they basically said, why can't the health insurance be like an auto insurance? Like, for example, if you look at the auto insurance, everybody takes care of their car so well because they are incented. The auto insurance is only covered for emergencies or the casualties. In the case of health insurance does not incentivize people to take care of themselves very well. That's a biggest flaw. And then the second aspect of that is, today, our healthcare industry is segmented in so many silos. And in fact, we divided our human body into different segments. There's a head doctor, there is a leg doctor, there is a liver doctor, but the treatment is never holistic. And majority of this is driven by individual lab scores. And many of the doctors, because they do not fully embrace the technology, many of the doctors are also afraid, and they are essentially not embracing the data, big data in the hospitals. They feel like it's a threat to their core profession. And then when I look at the VC community, they also have a bias against doctors, the traditional conventional doctors. In fact, when we look at some of the startups, what some of the VCs refer to as, if there is a doctor as part of the team, then they would want not fund it. I mean, there are some existing biases. And the overall thing is, as a citizen that are participating in the healthcare system, we believe that that's expensive, inefficient, and it's also not accessible. And one of the biggest flaws that I see in the healthcare system is a patient who is sick needs to drive to a doctor. And we all need to challenge that status quo. Why a patient who is sick needs to go travel to a doctor to get the care that we need. So the entire view is doctors are unhappy with the system, and the caretakers or the citizens are not happy with the system. The industry is not happy with the system. So we all have to take the responsibility to go challenge this status quo. And in fact, even the government now believes that the technology is the only means, particularly the modern technology is the only means to deliver for better access, better value, and reducing the cost. And when we look at the opportunity, why is big tech so much interested in the big tech in the healthcare industry? And number one, we see the huge opportunity. That's the reason why Amazon is betting a lot, Apple is betting a lot, and the Google and Facebook and all these people, is because there is a tremendous market. And in fact, if I look at all the quotes, Tim Cook, I believe said last year or the year before, he said the greatest contributions from Apple to the world is going to come in the healthcare industry. And the same thing, if you look at Amazon, Jeff Bezos echoes the same thing, and Satya Nadella says the same thing. And I'm super thrilled that all these leaders and all these big companies are putting all their innovation and the resources and muscle to transform this industry and ultimately create a better value for all the people that are involved. And some of the stats, I think, we kind of look at the stats, but let me jump ahead. One thing that I'm super thrilled is the COVID-19. And of course, all of us are hit by COVID-19. Our way of life is challenged in some respect. But when I actually look at the COVID-19 positives, COVID-19 accelerated the digital transformation by about 6 years. In the last 4 to 5 months, the amount of innovation or the progress that happened in the digital transformation across all industries is so acute. And if it weren't for the COVID-19, it probably would have taken another 6 to 8 years. And the biggest example for me was the telemedicine aspect. Before, people were tentative about telemedicine. And going back to what I said earlier, why does a sick patient need to go to a doctor and then need to fit into the availability slot? But now with the availability of the telemedicine, most people are now being treated remotely using some of the advanced technologies like video conferencing and FaceTime and so on and so forth. In fact, some of the demos that I've seen or the trials that I've seen where people are now bringing in augmented reality or the mixed reality to deliver almost like a near real-like an experience. So in a way, going back to my original theme of balance, unity, and excellence, the challenges like the COVID-19 is allowing us to stay calm and then figure out like what is the new excellence, what is the new unity, how can we deliver better outcomes. So in a way, I'm thrilled with the opportunity that the COVID-19 presented in progressing some of the tools like telemedicine and augmented reality to become more mainstream. And then the same thing with wearable and the healthcare apps. Now, many organizations, in fact, some of the insurance companies like Aetna, are incentivizing people to use a device like an Apple Watch. In a way, what they're doing is it's not just about the watch, but what they're doing is they're actually making the responsibility of the healthcare in the hands of the people. Going back to my analogy of auto insurance, every citizen needs to own the responsibility of their own health well-being. I gave this talk a few months ago at a healthcare conference. And what I was super thrilled with is one of the attendees, one of the CTOs of an organization came to me after the talk. And what he shared with me is just the Apple Watch with the 3 rings, the activity rings. And apparently he was given a gift of an Apple Watch by his wife on an anniversary, and he was weighing something like 240 pounds. And his wife asked him that all you need to do is close these 3 circles every day. And believe it or not, he religiously followed it, closing those 3 circles. And then about a year later, he now weighs about 160 pounds. And he profusely thanks Apple Watch for making him a healthier person. And I think Apple released a video at the Apple Watch 5 launch where there were several people thanking Apple for how Apple Watch prevented the users from some of the heart failures and some of the cardiac arrests, how it actually dialed an SOS and saving their lives. Essentially, the biggest trend that we are seeing is the new technologies like telemedicine and augmented reality are becoming mainstream and helping people get the better healthcare. And the tools like wearables and the healthcare apps, they are actually allowing people to embrace more healthier lifestyles. Now, when I look at the thematic of the big tech disruptions, like the AI, what are the 3 primary categories that I see? Number 1 is in the diagnosis area, where AI is playing a bigger role. And then the second thing is more in terms of the clinical trials, clinical trials, and then pharmaceutical, where we are trying to bring new type of drugs faster. And then the third dimension is about the care and the outcomes, which is how do we tailor this entire healthcare to drive specific outcomes in terms of value-based care, affordable care, and faster care. So in terms of the diagnosis, there are 3 types of solutions that are emerging. The first and foremost is using AI as a detection device targeted for a particular outcome. And then the second thing, which I'm going to get into some of the details, it is more about using the power of AI to find new patterns that we probably did not know before to come up with a better diagnosis for some of the chronic or unsolved problems. And then the third one is making the diagnostics as it do on your own. In other words, making it as part of the self-care. So if I look at some of the examples, the first and foremost is for things like diabetic retinopathy or even SCAN or the different diseases pertain to the cardio, lungs, and liver. There are several startups and several technologies that are emerging with a very specific device. And when I last looked at it, there was at least 70 new startups that are going after a very specific detection AI-based algorithm. But it's not just about the technology that I'm excited about. It's the is the overall structure. Like, for example, FDA changed their entire process on how to accelerate the approval and the certification of these devices. Before, every time you had a device like this, it actually required a 2-year cycle of getting in the queue and then get it certified and approved. And if that experiment failed, then you have to get back into the queue. One thing that dramatically changed this process is FDA's new fast track approvals, knowing that AI is a continuously bettering software. So they changed their program to allow the faster evolution and get to higher fidelity. So with that, we now are seeing more and more devices emerging to facilitate a better diagnosis that is dramatically improving the process. And then the second aspect is using the AI neural nets to spot atypical factors. As an example, the AI is all about finding patterns that we probably did not know before. And in fact, I sometimes refer to AI as God or chief data scientist, where there are so many patterns in the universe that we all have to figure out what patterns actually map to what outcome. Some of the examples of atypical neural net factors are, like, for example, some of the new algorithms that are emerging where you can actually look at the voice acoustic features and then map it to a cardio risk factor. And this is a new algorithm that the AI systems are able to figure it out, right? And similarly, the different types of the blood analysis to then go figure for all types of genetic diseases, including cancer detection. And again, this was not originally possible in our conventional medical science, but these are the new patterns that the AI machines are able to then figure out and then come up with a non-linear diagnosis for the diseases that was not previously possible. And then the third dimension is making it more of a self-care diagnostics, with devices like Apple Watch or things like healthy.io, or there are more dip.io where you can actually get something and then you can do a dip in your urine and then it automatically tells you if you have diabetes or other kind of symptoms. I truly believe that there will be more and more of these self-care diagnostic tools that are FDA certified. And in fact, if you look at it, Apple Watch is also an FDA certified for an EKG. So we will see more and more of these devices. And ultimately what that means is we are passing the responsibility of the self-care to the individual citizens. And then what that means is, number one, it actually reduces the cost of the healthcare. You don't no longer have to go to a doctor, and then the doctor would have to write a test. And then by the time you get the results, it's already too late. And with these devices becoming more readily accessible, did we ever imagine that you could actually get an EKG whenever you want? Like, for example, you can get an EKG, 100 times every day. In the today's world, without an Apple Watch, to get an EKG, you need to go to a specialist, and then they need to do it, and then they need to do a readout. So this is the kind of a DIY that's going to significantly disrupt the healthcare. Number one, it's going to increase the value, accessibility, and it's going to bring the overall cost down. And then if you look at the big tech in the second dimension, which is about the clinical trials and the pharma, a big part of the critical trials is the access to the data. Today in the healthcare industry, the data is so fragmented. The EHRs are so fragmented. So one of the initiatives that Apple is launching, and then Google and others are also doing, is, for example, Apple is launched the Care Kit and the Research Kit, where you can aggregate a patient's all health records in your health app on the mobile device. And then also using the Care Kit and the Research Kit, different people can then build algorithms and the apps, and then they can run algorithms to then help with a diagnosis or even as part of the continuous care. And one of the things that is also done is, because it's done on the device, and there's also tremendous amount of security and the privacy that's built in. It's all tethered to or bounded by the device. So this is a big initiative, and I think there are several organizations are participating in the health research kit and the care kit initiative. And ultimately, it's actually allowing people to get all the data in one place to facilitate better detection and also help with better tracking of the treatment. Similarly, um, all the pharma industries are now participating, with several successful startups, and then coming up with new types of pharmaceutical drugs, and also the nanomedicine, and also experiments with this basically is like rotational drugs. How can I target a specific symptom and then change it dynamically, where you don't have to have one fixed drug and then wait for the outcomes, but you can continuously change the drug composition to make sure that it is very targeted for a particular outcome. So in general, I think this is another big area in the disruption, where consolidating all the health records into one place, and then with all the types of data, like for example, imagine all of Srini's records from my MRIs and my scans and my lab work all in one central place. And then you can then have the algorithms come in and then look at the patterns across all these things and then correlate with an outcome. And this is very different than the siloed approach that we have, where the leg doctor looks at the leg data, and the liver doctor looks at the liver data, and then the head doctor looks at the health data, but then don't talk to each other. And this new framework that we're all converging to is going to disrupt, but ultimately it's going to result in a better direction and better care. And then the third dimension of the AI big tech disruption is in improving the overall care and overall outcomes. The first and foremost is about the role of doctors. I truly believe that the role of doctors is going to dramatically change. Number one, I truly believe in this notion of a data plus doctor. In other words, doctors are the experts in the domain. Their job is to make sure that they're annotating the data of the records correctly, so that will then guide the AI algorithms or the data scientists to then come up with the very specific outcomes. So my intuition for the doctors is, do not be afraid of the data, but rather embrace and take on the strategic role of as an expert, and then be part of sanitizing the data, or be part of enhancing the quality of the data. And that way the algorithms can get better and better. So some of these examples where the doctors and the data scientists partner together, or some experiments that were done by Google with the DeepMind and with the Morpho Eye Hospital, and then they basically saw tremendously positive results. And it resulted in doctors being happy, hospital being happy, and also the patients being happy. And the second thing that I would see is more of the therapy bots, or part of the self-wear or the healthy wearables. The tools like Yogify, or even in the wellness industry is actually exploding with the companies like Peloton and Mirror and emerging startups like Yogify, where we are not looking at the healthcare as a disease management, but rather healthcare needs to transform more into a lifestyle management. In other words, we need to work with healthy people more than diseased people. In other words, there's an age-old saying, like, prevention is better than cure. We don't spend enough in keeping people healthy. We only invest dollars when they become sick. So if you look at it, if you project it, there is a lot more incentive for the healthcare industry to make people sick, because only then they will be needed. But if you were to flip the entire industry into, is like, my healthcare industry's primary focus is to keep people healthy. And I truly believe that the value should shift more and more in the proactive care to keep people healthy, as opposed to treat sick people, right? So there are tremendous amount of bots that are also coming up, for example, for emotional care and the counseling bots, that our primary job is to keep people healthy before they become sick. And I think there is tremendous opportunity in this area. And I truly believe that every one of us, we're going to carry, whether it's an Apple Watch or some kind of a healthcare bot that is continuously guiding us towards leading a better life. And then the third dimension of the AI is value-based care. today it's very difficult to measure a dollar spent and to see how well it is actually delivering the value in terms of what is the overall productivity. But with some of the algorithms that are being deployed in like, for example, in Arkansas Hospital, where the machines are now making decisions on when we need to add some, more expensive diagnosis, and then when we need to, go to a more advanced care based on data. Today, in the absence of data, the only way that we are going to get somebody there is like go through all kinds of tests. But when you use the data, it can actually allow us to prioritize care, prioritize the more advanced tests to the people that need it, and also prioritize the care based on this. I mean, just look at an example. When the Italy COVID response, they have insufficient beds, and then there are more people that are being admitted in the hospital that require the care with a ventilator and so on and so forth. The only decision that they made was very arbitrary. It's based on the age, and that was very inhumane. But rather, if you were to collect a lot more data about the different people, their situations, and also using the data to then go map different people to different facilities that are available, the overall care would have been so much more optimal, and it would have resulted in a better outcome. So in general, if you look at the big tech and the role of AI, it has a tremendous role to play in both the diagnosis, in the clinical research and the drugs and the treatment, but also in the overall care and the outcomes. And ultimately, it's about enabling the patients to own their responsibility in staying healthy, not seek for healthcare when you become sick. I mean, that's always there, but the primary responsibility is in staying healthy. And then optimizing care based on the people that need it, and also based on how to get the more value for the treatment that you have. And the last but not least is the doctors need to embrace technology a lot more. Don't think that it's a data versus doctor. It is a data plus doctor. And together, we are going to create a better world for us. So that's kind of my overarching theme. This big disruption that is happening with AI and AR, and powered by the resources coming from the likes of Amazon and Apple and the Facebook. Ultimately, I truly believe that we're going to result in a modern healthcare industry that incentivizes a lot of people to stay healthy. And that means better and accessible and affordable care for consumers, the insurers, and the doctors. And it results in outcomes that we all should be proud of. And in a way, we should all thank COVID for accelerating this urgency, but also accelerating the innovation and resulting in the better outcomes. So that's kind of what I have. If there are any questions, I would love to take. But these are some of my thoughts on the overall industry.
Mr. Gurrapu, very good presentation as usual that we have heard from you, and very broad to understand. At the same time, you go into the depth. I'm looking at some Q&A. You may also go to that part so that you can pick which one you want to answer. I have questions from, I think, Roma, Basu, and Kiran K.
Yeah, I think there are some questions, like, let me actually phrase, like, is explainability a big issue for you with models? Absolutely, yes, right? The ethics and explainability are a big part of, code to AI being successful, right? And that's why I resonate a lot with Elon Musk's OpenAI initiative, where AI should be all about transparency. And I don't like, closed AI systems. And that's why we are investing a lot in making sure that there are explainability. Otherwise, what happens is there are all kinds of biases that creep in, and that can create a shape of the outcomes that we would not be proud of. So explainability and ethics, and also investing in more transparent models, something like an OpenAI. I believe that is there's a way to do it, and that's how and I think it's a collective responsibility. It's a collective responsibility that we all need to make transferability, ethics, and explainability as core to every AI model that we are using in public. And
I think there's more. Did you answer Kiran's question as well?
So the thing about, there is another question is, how does AR help in healthcare?
Oh, okay.
Use cases already seeing adoption. So here's the thing, like every software, right? Every software, wave, like software 1.0 was a, client server, and then internet era, then the mobile and the cloud era, and the AI era. I truly believe that the next generation will be, next era is truly AR. AR combined with AI can shape more mixed reality experiences. But with AI or the AR, with every modern technology, the value is shifting into people' ability to conceive what does that new experience actually mean. Right? It's no longer the value is about people who write code or people who do this, because there are so many tools that are available there. The people that can dream big in coming up with a new experience that can result in a better outcome. A simple example of that is, like as an example with an AR, and take COVID as an example, right? Today, never before we imagined a world where we'll all be interacting with each other primarily over video conferencing. Like, I mean, this has become the norm, like the conference that we are doing, now we are virtually, to a fact that where we have now accepted this as the primary mode of reality. But if this becomes the primary mode of reality, how can we deliver a better interactive experience while we, live our lives? And this is where, if you were to introduce this AR and mixed reality, then it'll actually help people to communicate and collaborate much better. It results in a near physical like an experience. But if you were to look at the healthcare, the telemedicine is one area where I think, there is tremendous opportunity where it does not even make somebody feel like, you are, whether you are physical or whether you're remote. So that is one area I think, it has tremendous, potential, where I truly believe that the success of healthcare is when the telemedicine becomes the primary norm, and people should only go visit a doctor physically on an exception basis when they absolutely need it. Today, COVID kind of forced it, but again, we are trying to go back to the old world. I truly believe that the technology with AR, where the telemedicine or the telecare becomes the primary mode, and then the physical visit, it becomes, more of a norm. I think that's where we need, more richer compute and so on and so forth. But we are already getting there. And I believe yesterday in the conference, I was seeing one example of HoloLens is being used as part of the telemedicine care. So, and I now see a lot more examples or experiences that people are conceiving in the AR. And again, all of us need to go look at, what is an AR experience is going to look like, and look at the world very differently. For AR to be successful, we need to think differently, which is like, assume that, virtually, what is a better experience that will allow us to come together and collaborate much better. Once you frame that way, then, all these experiences, come to you, and then you start making this happen. So I'm actually seeing some wonderful examples of AR in shopping and telemedicine and the care, and even, things like, the hospital, resource management with AR experiences. And the next question is from my guru and, my best friend, Shailesh Visani. Thing is, I loved how you mentioned health is your own responsibility. Given your yoga passion, can you explain your thoughts on regulating yoga into healthcare system, like physical therapy, chiropractics, etc.? I mean, this is a fantastic question. I think Shailesh would also be able to answer this, very well. If you look at yoga, yoga is all about it's all about, it's not the moves actually. Yoga is all about how can you stay calm, stay healthy, stay peaceful. Once you're peaceful, that means, you would not be able to get any other, devices, because most of the diseases start in your mind. When your mind is not in a good place, then that is going to manifest into all the other physical symptoms, and then eventually it becomes a disease. My philosophy on the healthcare is healthcare should pivot from treating sick to keeping people healthy. That's the biggest paradigm. And yoga is a fantastic tool yoga is a primary tool to keep people healthy, keeping their minds peaceful, and then keeping their body healthy. And now that is the trick part is, many organizations are now rolling out yoga and meditation. The mindfulness are the key parts of keeping their employees more healthy and the productive and so on. I see this in my company, and I see this across all the companies. Where people are struggling is, how do we make this as part of a daily routine so that the people can take it up? And this is where the tools like Yogify, where it is a smart yoga sensor mat, or Peloton and the mirror, can actually help. The biggest aspect of the yoga is, there is a Patanjali Yoga Sutra that says Atha Yoga Anushasana. What it means is, yoga is a self-discipline. We can all introduce all the tools, but we will only be successful when the individual people own it up as their own self-discipline as a practice. So what that means is, we need to have incentives for people to, number one, we should be able to track what people are doing, and then incentivize them, and then give them some outcomes that they feel good that they're able to achieve. So the tools like whether the activity rings and the Yogify, Yogi mat, not only it allows you to customize your yoga mat for a specific outcome. Like, for example, there is a routine for back pain. There is a routine for, the different types of, whether it's a shoulder pain or sciatica nerve, and there are, different outcomes that are programmed into the yoga mat. And then what it also does is, it actually allows people to do mastery-based learning, track the progress, and then go succeed it. So, and then Apple recently announced a Fitness Plus kind of service that includes all kinds of different programs. The summary here is, I think yoga plays an important role, but yoga is not an exclusive. Yoga is one tool that keeps your mind and the body fit, so that your productivity and your lifestyle improves dramatically. And there are tools that are now coming into the play, like even Apple Watch has a yoga routine, and then tools like Yogify that actually guides the user towards better outcomes. I think there is tremendous opportunity here, but I see a world where all these lifestyle devices are going to play a bigger role in the individual's responsibility. Any other questions? How are we doing on time?
I think we are okay. We can still take one question from Kiran. Had a question, and I don't see him with the question here now. He's there.
Yeah.
Stephen has a question, and Kiran has a question.
Yeah. Kiran is excellent points on healthcare state of affairs. The biggest challenge in making healthcare competitive, efficient, and insurance like is the government, which is driving healthcare socialist and inefficient. What's your take on that? So I do agree with some of those things. I think there are some regulations, and I think it's a government, but also some of these industries are also self-protecting themselves, right? But I think while that is there, I'm very heartened with some of the changes that are already being embraced. Like, the thing that I talked about, FDA fast track approvals, which is allowing some of these the new technology devices, part of the self-care, to be released to the market at a much faster pace. So I think the government is changing. But the big incentive for the government to change is when the private markets embrace. Before, what was happening is, it was only the small startups that are trying to take on this big healthcare industry that has all kinds of self-protective measures around it. But now the pendulum has swung the other way. Now it's all the big players that are actually entering the market. And the way they are entering the market is, they're actually forming partnerships with the established players, like, whether it is somebody like Amazon, partnering with an existing insurance company. And so with that way, what they're doing is they're using all their muscle and the resources. And also the biggest challenge that I think is, for somebody to disrupt is, number one, you need to build a differentiated technology, but you also need to have the go-to-market. Now with these big companies, not only they have the technology advantage, but they also have this bigger reach. With the Amazon, with the Whole Foods and their retail, and the Google, about 6 billion users, using their search, and then Apple with about 1.5 billion devices. So all of them have, and Microsoft as with their Office and Azure, all of them have significant reach. And I think they reach, and then the way they are approaching it is very sensibly. In other words, they're forming partnership with established players in the industry, and together they are able to go make a disruption. I think ultimately, I truly believe that successful outcomes are going to shape the government and other stuff. I do not want to use the word socialist or anything. Ultimately, we all represent universal well-being. And I think, but the universal well-beings need to be driven by the private markets, not by the government. But sometimes the private markets can get out of whack in their pursuit of the greeds, then they may not even know that they're actually doing it. And that's where government needs to provide the regulation. But government should only be able to regulate this ulterior, greed kind of motives, but government should not be in the business of owning these industries. So I truly believe that the where the industry is going, it's going to shape the right behaviors. And I like some of the things like FDA fast track, the public-private partnership, and the big companies with the bigger reach together. We're going to make some of these bigger changes. And ultimately, the technology is also moving at a faster pace where we can test it, trial it, and then deliver the better outcomes.
There are 2 more minutes, and you have questions from Stephen and Portia that you could not cover before.
Porsche, I think, let me cover the Porsche.
Yeah, we have 1 more minute, and you can see which one you want to answer, and then
other ones, we can take it offline. So okay. What's your thought on patient privacy and data sharing? I mean, this is something that I'm super sensitive about. I spent about 20 plus years in the security industry. I think in the medicine, there's also an age-old saying, which is like, the patient's data needs to be kept in private. In other words, any negative data needs to be hidden, and then positive data about the people needs to be made public. That's a philosophical metaphor. And in the case of the patient's data privacy, I think we have responsibility to make sure that every patient's data needs to be kept private. And I think the privacy by default is now being initially led by Apple. Now that is being come to agreed by pretty much all the industries as the core value. Just like AI needs to be transparent, privacy needs to be designed as part of the default. I think where we were struggling with is the lack of the technologies to enable it while still allowing the collaboration. But like, for example, Apple's approach of centralizing all the records on the patient's own device without having to do much on the cloud, that is one approach that actually guards the privacy of the data. But even in other places, like the tools like tokenization, and these are proven technologies, the tokenization that are FIPS compliant, where you can actually anonymize the sensitive parts of the data, and then go make it happen. And then once when we reach the tipping point of the quantum computing, then technologies like homomorphic encryption that would make privacy is like just as a no-brainer. That's how we transact it. I think where we are struggling right now is we over-index on the privacy data where it doesn't matter. And then by over-indexing and trying to be privacy in the data that doesn't really matter, what happens is we don't use the right amount of technology to guard what is really private. But I think there is a healthy debate that's happening. What I'm encouraged with is all the efforts that are happening in the industry where we take the patient's data, private patient's data, seriously.
Srini Gurrapu, we are out of time, if it's okay.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, you can take questions offline as required. And we have to start the next session. Srini Gurrapu, thank you a lot. Excellent talk as usual. And we are going to move to the next.